welcome back to another episode of NostalgiaCast. I'm Jonny,
I'm Darin.
and today we're going to talk about The Shawshank Redemption, 1994, directed by Frank Darabont, starring Tim Robbins, Morgan Freeman, and some
Bob
other.
Gunton, Clancy Brown, William Sadler, James Whitmore. Yeah,
Yeah,
a bunch of
it's
people.
packed full of good actors.
Right, right.
So, Darin, I picked this movie. I am really fond of it. I like it a lot. It's something that I can watch over and over again. I don't really get tired of it, even though I will say this. When I do watch it, I do sometimes find myself like hoping it would just kind of speed up a little bit, like it's a little bit slow in some places. It's a slow burn for sure.
Yeah,
But I
to a
don't really
point.
get bored, but I get to the point where I'm like, okay, move on a little quicker, a little quicker.
Yeah.
But I really like this movie. I first saw it at my sister's house on VHS. I don't really remember like exactly the situation or what it was or what happened, how we
Right.
ended up watching it, but we ended up watching it. I just remember the feeling I had afterwards. And like when it was over and I was like, wow, it was just kind of like one of those movies that kind of hits you. And then it stayed with me for a long time after that. And it became something that, obviously I had to purchase and own. And I'd watch it and kind of study it. And because, there's a lot of great things in this movie, a lot of great cinematography, a lot of great acting. The script is awesome. Like
Mm.
I love the writing in this movie. But we'll talk about all that. But what's your history with? Oh wait, first of all, before you do your history,
Yeah.
this is a new year, so we're in 1994 now, in our bucket list season of
Yeah. Yeah.
1990s. So let's briefly go over the box office numbers for that year. What were
Okay.
the movies?
Well,
What were
it's interesting because my history actually ties into that. Like you, I don't remember my first. I don't remember when it was. I know it was on VHS. I just know that when that ending hits, it's one of the where you leave on a. I think this movie is the prime example for a movie ending in a way that makes you feel like you've seen something great. Like a lot of movies, if you can watch a movie that's awesome, and if it has a bad ending, all you're going to remember is that bad ending. That's all that's going to sum up. And I think Shawshank, like you were talking, it's a prison movie. It's trying to get a point across what it's like to be in prison. So of course it's going to be drawn out. I would even call it a slog, kind of to a point, because that's what
yeah,
you're trying to learn. But when that ending hits and it's earned, you walk out thinking you've seen the greatest movie of all time. So
yeah.
I do remember that feeling. And oddly enough, this movie was not a box office hit. This was kind of a bomb. And I think it's because you had Lion King, you had Forrest Gump, you had Pulp Fiction that kind of swallowed it up and in the zeitgeist, and it became kind of big. But if you're looking at the box office, I'm just going to list the top 10 here. You got Lion King, which we might be talking about in a little bit. 1994, it made $771 million at the
Wow.
box office. I think with re-releases, it's gone up to 913 million, something like that. Forrest Gump. Wow, I didn't realize this. Forrest Gump worldwide came in with 329 million. I know we covered that one, but that's like less than half, I believe, of what Lion King came up with. True Lies is number 346 million. The Santa Claus, 144 million. The Flintstones, whoa, 130 million. And then to round out the top 10, you've got Dumb and Dumber, Clear and Present Danger, Speed, which we covered, The Mask, and Pulp Fiction. That's interesting. Pulp Fiction, 108 million. But I think Shawshank only made somewhere around 73. The budget was like 25 million. So it was a hit, but when you look at the returns, but it people look at it as kind of a flop. So I think this is what's categorized as a cult movie because it didn't hit big originally, but then it picked up a cult following, and now it's been number one on the top 100 list on Internet Movie Database for 17 years. The Dark Knight, I believe, hit the number one spot in 2008 when that movie was high in the zeitgeist. But since then, Shawshank Redemption has usurped it, and no movie has knocked the Shawshank Redemption off of the top of that list. That's
Wow.
how popular this movie became.
I almost can't believe that this is considered the best movie of all time for 17
Voting,
years. That's
yeah.
it's a good movie, but holy cow, I can't believe 17 years, number one. That's amazing.
And I really that comes down to that ending. I really think that nothing else matters for people, whether it's drawn out, whether there are flaws in the writing, whether there are flaws in any of the plot stuff. When that ending hits and it's red and it's Andy smiling at each other, and that Thomas Newman, that piano cue might be my favorite piano cue of all. It's so beautiful, and you walk out just feeling whole and satisfied and full of hope. And I think that's what does it for people, regardless of what the rest of the movie does. I really think that's what sums it up.
Yeah, well, like I said, I walked away feeling really good about everything. So it
Yeah,
was like, it definitely worked for me.
right.
But also, not just the ending, but all the reveals at the end, and everything just kind of gets tied up so nicely, and you're like, oh, it's so satisfying. And we'll
Yeah,
talk about
yeah.
all those reveals later. But I do want to talk about first of all, Frank Darabont,
Okay.
because this is the movie that introduced me to him. I mean, I think it might be one of his first movies, right? Like, I don't think he had much before this.
This is his directorial debut, right?
Okay.
Right. Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
He originally sent his he this is part of the Stephen King has this thing where he will let an aspiring filmmaker adapt one of his short stories for $1. He calls them his dollar baby project. And so filmmakers will write him and say, "Can I a first time offer, can I adapt this?" And you say, "Yeah, just pay me $1." And it's these movies are not really put in the public, you never see them in a public space or anything, but they do get filmmakers started. So you're looking at stories of like a Survivor type, which might be the grossest Stephen King story I've ever read, about a guy that's finds himself like marooned on an island and he has nothing to eat, so he starts eating himself. It's so gross, and it's all in a diary. And he just toward the end he starts going crazy, so he's writing just gibberish because he's eaten himself up to his legs, like up to his waist.
Oh
It's so
gosh.
gross. But then like everything's eventual. Night Surf is another one. Frank Darabont, I think in '83, optioned something called The Woman in the Room. And so he adapted that as a short for a Stephen King thing. And then later, I think in '87, he approached King with a and gave him a $5,000 deal or something like that, where he would make Shawshank. Stephen King didn't think this was going to be a good adaptation because he didn't think it was cinematic, and Darabont thought it was very obvious how to do that. But
Yeah.
he bought the rights in '87, but he didn't start writing, I think, until '92, and he wrote it over like 8 weeks. So he optioned that script to Castle Rock, which obviously was because of Stand By Me, which is another part of the something we've covered. It's from this book right here. It's from the Different Seasons book, where it includes Shawshank Redemption, Apt Pupil, Stand By Me. It's called The Body in Here, and then a story called The Breathing Method, which has not been adapted. But anyway, Rob Reiner became such a success off the Stand By Me that that's how he formed, I believe, Castle Rock. And so Rob Reiner was given the first option to direct, but Darabont was like, "I think I want to make this my thing." But Rob Reiner was like very supportive, like mentored him on set, and so I think that was kind of a cool. But yeah, this is his directorial debut, and it's obviously a very strong debut for
Yeah.
Darabont.
Not bad for a first time out.
No, yeah,
Um,
to be the #1 movie on IMDb for 17
yeah.
years.
Well, also it was called Rita Hayworth and the Shawshank Redemption, right? The
Yeah, yeah,
short
yeah.
story.
Right.
So that's interesting. So yeah, Frank Darabont. I and then after this, he does the Green Mile. He does the Mist.
Yeah.
He kind of had like kind of a marriage with Stephen King for
Right.
a long time.
Right.
And what's funny to me is they're kind of the same type of movies. They're all kind of like period pieces. They all kind of
Yeah.
like have a very slow burn, kind of I don't know. And the Majestic is very similar as well. And what
Mhm.
was funny when I told you we were doing this one, like I saw the Green Mile on TV and I was like, hey, the Green Mile. So I ended up watching that. And the next day I saw the Majestic. Say, hey, let's watch Majestic. And then last night I showed my older boys the Shawshank Redemption. And so I've had like a Darabont week. So it's
Yeah.
been kind of fun to like kind of binge on all of his movies.
Right.
Um, but what happened to him after all these movies? He kind of went off into television, right?
Yeah, he did the first season of The Walking Dead, which, when you look back on it, is its best season. I think the writing is very focused and it's headed to a spot that, and then something happened, snafus behind the scenes, AMC or whatever, and he got fired. And then I just think from then on, Walking Dead just kind of went downhill and was never as concentrated. So yeah, that's what he did. And then I think he wrote a version or a script version of Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull
Okay.
that Spielberg really, really liked, but Lucas did not. And so Lucas rejected it, and then we ended up with the forgettable movie that we
Yes,
have
that we
now. Yeah,
got.
yeah. So anyway, so
So, do you know if there's any plans for him to come back and do another movie? What's going on with Frank Darabont? Is he gonna
I'm
return?
sure that he has some stuff like saved up. I don't know. I haven't heard anything. I think he's doing like some comics or something like that. I know he did some script doctoring, but again, I think if you do Shawshank Redemption, I think Bob Gutton has said that he earned at one point $100,000 a week just from showings on TV. or
Oh wow.
rentals. So the residuals, he was able to make a lot of money off of that. So maybe you don't have to work. You know what I mean? Once you
Yeah.
do a movie like this and it's as
Yeah.
revered as it is.
Well, all he's gotta do is look through Stephen King's catalog and find something else he likes. He
Yeah,
can like
yeah. Right.
another piece from Stephen King.
I have to give a shout out to The Mist too. I think that's if
Yeah.
oddly enough, I think that's my favorite Darabont King adaptation. It's just so relentless and it's so cruel, and that ending is just when you watch it the first time, you're like feel like you're cheated, but then the more that it sits with you, like that was perfect, like that fits. I don't know, I love The Mist. I think it's a very unrelenting movie.
Yeah, I mean, but unlike, Shawshank, it's unsatisfying. When I saw the mist, I was pissed off.
Yeah, exactly.
No, didn't go
Right,
away feeling better after that one.
right, right.
But yeah, so the acting, I want to kind of talk about it briefly. Not all the actors, because there's so many of them to talk about.
Right.
But obviously Tim Robbins, we got to talk about. He's the lead, plays Andy Dufresne.
Yep.
Now he's the straight man. Obviously, he I think he does a good job. Um, but I don't know. Like, even though I really like him in this, I don't know if there's something missing. If I'm like feeling like there's something missing, but there's moments where I kind of go, is he just kind of like, is he faking this? I question it at moments. I don't know why I do, but there are moments where he's really, really believable, and I buy it. But there are also moments where I don't, and I don't know why that is. But what do you think of Tim Robbins' performance?
I think it's a weird performance because I think he's purposely supposed to come off as icy and cold, because of his demeanor in the court case. That's why they sentence him. You see him in these court cases all the time. Oh, he showed no remorse. That means that, but maybe that's just the way he is. He has a conversation later with Red where he talks about how his wife, who was murdered, obviously, is like she never felt like she knew me. Like you could talk to me, but then there was something that was just not there. And so I think it's funny that you mentioned that because I think his performances it comes off as very like phoned in and very like I said ice cold. I don't feel his performance a lot of the time, and I think maybe it's trying to come off as enigmatic, like you're not supposed to know him. Like again, the scene behind me is like when they're talking and like he gets up and he's like, Red says you shouldn't think about this stuff, and he's like, yeah, I mean it's just bad luck, right? And it's just my turn, like that's just how it is. And he gets up and he becomes hard to read. Red can't read him. Like we can't read him. Like what is he? And so that whole last section is like, is he going to kill himself? What's going to happen? I think it's a hard performance because he's trying to thread that needle of do you believe him? Do you not? Like what? So in a way, I think it's a very cold performance to a point where to me I don't know if I enjoy it. You know what I mean? You watch Morgan Freeman, very warm, very satisfied. It's his first voiceover narration. This is the one that earned him that reputation. You
Yeah,
love watching Morgan Freeman do everything you know what I mean? And then Tim Robbins, I think Andy Dufresne is supposed to come off as a cipher. And I think, like I said, it's a hard needle to thread. I like Robbins, but I don't know. I wrote here that it's funny that Morgan Freeman got the best supporting actor nom when he's actually the protagonist
yeah,
of the story. He's the one that changes and kind of guides the story along. But yeah,
yeah.
I don't know.
Well,
It's just funny that you mentioned that.
that was my example because in that scene where he's talking to Red and he's like, getting all teary eyed and everything, that's the one where I was kind of like, he feels like he's forcing this. Like, even though you find out later that he already knew he was going to get out, he knew it already, he'd already tunneled through, he knew he was going to get out. And so basically was saying goodbye and all that stuff. So, but anyway, I remember feeling like when I was watching the acting that it was forced. But the scene with the warden, when he gets all mad about him not, pursuing the new evidence about his case and everything, and he throws a tantrum and everything on the way out, that performance that struck me. And I was like, oh man, that
Yeah.
was you feel the anger and like this is my chance to get out. Okay, you see that when he's doing that, I buy it. But in this scene with Red, I don't.
Yeah. Like I said, hard performance. I get what he's doing. It can come off as likable or unlikable, but when you got Morgan Freeman and concentrate on, I guess it's not as big of
Yeah,
a deal.
and like you say, Morgan Freeman, man, like you just want to like hang out with the guy. You just like I just want to be around him.
Yeah.
And I love the fact that he earned this reputation of being like the world's best narrator for this movie. I think that's so funny because
Yeah.
I mean, what do you do? The March of the Penguins? Is that what the last next one he
Yeah.
did with his voiceover?
Right.
Yeah, it's so good. I
War
love
of the
this.
Worlds he did,
Oh yeah,
so yeah.
yeah. And then of course there's that that Family Guy skit where they make fun of it.
Right,
Talk about
right.
that. But what do you think about Morgan Freeman?
Perfect. I don't think he strikes a false note. I think when he's funny, he's funny. When he's heartfelt, he's heartfelt. I really love the joke because in the book, Red is a white Irish dude, and that's the way it was written in the script. And when I think one of the producers thought about Morgan Freeman, because the book never says they're white people. The screenplay in the book never say they're black or white. They're just characters, right?
Mm.
And so I think when she offered, I wish I remembered her name, and I apologize, but when she offered Morgan Freeman's name as a potential for Red, Darabont was all for it. And I think, yeah, when that line when they're on, when Andy's like, "Why do they call you Red?" It's like
Yeah.
probably because I'm Irish. I think it was
Yeah.
funny and there was a joke, and he laughs, and it's very warm. I like that he's a natural leader. I feel for him when Andy comes out of solitary after playing that the Mozart, the Marriage of Figaro, right? And he's
Mhm.
talking to him about hope, and Red always reacts very, very strongly to that idea of hope. Like he's offended by it, and it strikes you like it's. I think it's a weird balance on Robbins because Robbins, you're never able to, like you said, like he seems like he's just walking through it. He's sleepwalking. Then he has that one part where he comes alive. Like Freeman is the opposite. He's very warm, and then that scene with hope, and he seems to be hurt by it. All of a sudden, it's like, whoa, where's that coming from, right? And you feel it, and I don't. The thing I will say about their two performances is I think they really play off each other really well. Their characters are great opposites. Like that Andy comes in innocent and then redeems himself. Red goes in guilty and then ends up redeeming himself for finding redemption, finding all that stuff.
Yeah.
There's that scene again after they've had that argument, they've kind of let it go, which is what friends do, right? Andy offers him that harmonica, which I know that Red played the harmonica before he was incarcerated and kind of lost that. That's kind of a symbol for hope. But then because he gives him that poster of Marilyn Monroe, right? There's that scene where it shows Red holding the harmonica, it shows Andy staring at the Marilyn Monroe poster, and then very, very softly and gently, Red he plays a note on that harmonica, like he's gaining that hope back, and you can tell that they're making each other better. You know what I mean? It's not just the screenplay saying these two are very good friends. I think in their performances in that part, even they're like, I don't know why I'm changing. Like I'm changing and I'm different, but I can't put my finger on it. And as we're watching the movie, you're like, yeah, they're changing each other, right? They're friends, and that's why. Again, that's a big part of why them coming together at the end really works.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree with all that. Okay, so the other performance that I really enjoy is it's it's uh it's won by one of the supporting characters, and it's the largest supporting character, and that's William Sadler's part as a Haywood.
Right.
And I'm not quite sure what it is that I like so much about it, but because at first you don't really like the character, he's kind of obnoxious, and kind of like get out of here. But then over time in the movie, you start to kind of really relate with them, and you start to really like him. And I just think it's probably his best performance. I've seen him in other movies. I first saw him in Project X, back the monkey movie with Matthew Broderick back in the
Wow.
yeah, and then he was also in, I remember, a Project Greenlight movie, Battle of Shaker Heights. He's in that, and for some reason I remember that. I don't know why, but yeah, I think this is by far his best performance, and I think I really like that character.
Yeah. I know him. First time I saw him was in Die Hard 2. And the interesting thing about him playing Colonel Stewart in there is he plays such a badass, like a karate fighting badass, that it's funny when you hear that William Sadler in real life is one of the nicest, kindest people you'll ever meet. And there's a warmth from him that comes out. There are a few parts that really stick out for me. The first is when that they first get the fresh fish in and he starts picking at the fat ass.
Mhm.
And then Hadley comes in and takes the fat ass guy out, beats him but when he's threatening fat ass, it cuts to Haywood in his cell going quiet, quiet, like
Yeah,
stop. And then when Hadley pulls him out and starts beating the crap out of him, it does cut back to Haywood, and you can see in his face like I've done something bad, like I've caused
yeah,
this to happen.
yeah,
And then the next and that's the first I wrote that's the first sign that there's a heart in this movie because I'm like, oh, I feel that. Like I don't know. I liked him from that moment. So I'm like, oh, that makes him very human, right? He does when you see him come in the lunchroom, he's gloating and they're prepared for it. And then you find out the fat ass has died in the infirmary or in the infirmatory or whatever.
yeah,
And he gets a look on his face like, oh, I caused that, right? And Andy asks, again, very cold, right? Like Robbins says, what
his
was
name.
his name?
Yeah,
And Haywood gets upset. And I think he's deflecting. He doesn't
yeah,
want to feel guilty, right? And then I love the part where they're reading the books, or no, when Brooks threatens him, right? And Brooks lets him go, and he's like, "Well, what about me?" Like, and Red's like, "Oh, come on, you've had worse shaving cuts, right?" And he
Yeah, yeah,
keeps trying to make it about him. And then I love when they finally get all the books and they're going through it, and he's like, "Oh, look, this is Count of Monte Cristo by Alexandre Dumas." So I agree. Like, he's very believable and likable, and he's
yeah.
in there a lifer again. So when Andy, spoilers obviously, has disappeared and they're just chatting about all the fun times, and it's Haywood just recounting when they're on top of that rooftop, and I just think that, yeah, it's a very warm performance from
I
him.
remember watching like a documentary interview that he did, and he was talking about how they had 2 weeks rehearsal for this movie, and they actually they rehearsed it a lot, and they would go over and over these scenes, and I think that shows. And I always appreciate when I know that they rehearsed before they shot. It
Yeah,
makes a big difference because when you don't rehearse and you don't have that chemistry and the rapport built up with the other actors and everything, it shows on screen. The camera picks it up. But if
yeah,
when you
yeah.
have it and you've rehearsed it and you feel natural and comfortable, then
Mhm.
that also shows. And I think it shows that they rehearsed. And he was talking about that in that interview. So,
Yeah.
but anyway, so I want to talk about one other guy who he stands out only because I mistake him for somebody else, and that is I already forgot his name. I gotta pull it up again. Sorry. Um, what's his name? The guy who plays ah, the guy who plays Floyd.
Okay.
Ian Libby. He plays Floyd, and I always mistake Floyd for Ron Perlman, and I don't know.
Uh,
I'm like, I swear that's like Ron Perlman to me, and I always think that they could play brothers in a movie if they had to.
yeah.
But anyway, I like his character too. I think it's again small part, and also David Proval, he's in there. He's got a little small part,
Right, right.
um, but I think they all supporting cast does a great job.
Yeah. James Whitmore, obviously a great character
Oh yeah,
actor. He for as Brooks, he pulls off his screen time very, like, he's very warm, and you could tell why people like him, but you're also like, why is he in here? He's such a kind soul, right? And then obviously what happens to him is very, I think he makes a strong impression just because of where the story goes with him.
yeah. I want to talk briefly about the writing and also the cinematography.
Okay.
I talked about how I love the screenplay. I don't think I'm surprised it was you said it was a short story, right?
Yeah.
Surprised because
Develop.
it seems like it could be a full length novel because it's
Mhm.
so it's so well structured. I can envision this being like this big thick book. You know what I mean? Like the way it's played out on screen, you imagine it's just like amazing, novel. And because of all the different scenes and all the different sections and stuff, I think that it would have been a great novel. But anyway, the screenplay, man, like it's almost perfect. I don't know, I couldn't find anything that I don't like. In fact,
Mhm.
there are lines in this movie that always kind of come to my mind in moments of my life. Like I'll be doing something that's maybe like exciting and think like I was so excited I couldn't hold a thought in my head. I'll hear that line as I'm like just living my life, and it's like it's so perfect for the moment. It just like I don't know. I think it's just structured really, really well, and
Mhm.
it's so fun.
Okay.
That was good.
Yeah, we will we'll come back to I
Okay.
agree with you. Like, this
Yeah.
this screenplay is written, again, the note I had, I love when it focuses on the everyday details of prison life, right? And it goes back to what Red says about you will do anything to keep your mind busy. All you've got is time, and so you're going to figure out. And so you get that. You get when they're betting on the fresh fish when they come in. You get like they always have these bets, stuff like that. You get like Andy carving the rocks. Like, there's a conversation where Red's like, it's going to take you years to carve these things. Like, well, I have the years, right? I just need the rocks. And so and then obviously the stuff with the library and how that's all done. Like when Andy started doing the taxes for everybody, even the rival like baseball teams or the other prison guards, stuff like that. It's just giving you this snapshot of what everyday life is like, which also ties in. It's interesting when Brooks and Red are both released. That's another thing of repetition, right? It repeats the same scene obviously when Red's out, but it's obviously like you go to work, you're in a halfway house. It's just that repetition even outside. So when you're out of the prison, it's even routine and it's rote for you. I really like that structure of the stuff. It's also very of the screenplay. It's also very episodic, which I guess is the point. So you have like the stuff with the sisters that's in there. You have the stuff with like how he figures out like I want to get the poster, how he becomes friends with Red, how there's a whole thing like I said with doing the taxes. So it's all it becomes like the Norton's like confidant, like his right hand man, so to speak. So it has all, and so I think it's very well structured from that way. And like I said, you're comparing the novella. I think it's interesting because when you're adapting something, when you're adapting a novel, you have to leave stuff out, right? Because you can't fit everything into a 2 hour, 2.5 hour movie.
Yeah.
But for a novella, you can have everything, and you also add stuff. So they added the Brooks stuff. They added the parole board stuff with Red. The Brooks, I think in the novella, he's just relegated to a single paragraph, and he dies in a retirement home. So there's nothing really too tragic about him in the book. But again, there's one segment of this that I think is really weak, and I think it feels like Darabont has brought in another writer, but we'll get to that when we talk. I want to talk about like comparing the novella like a little bit later. But you're right, like the writing, there are lines in this, like we talked about. This movie can be looked at as a slog, but I think the ending and some of the writing really just makes you forget about some of the weaker stuff, I think.
Yeah, I agree with that. The other high point for me in this movie is the cinematography. There
Roger freaking
Yeah.
Deakins.
There are probably four or five just really orchestrated shots that just like blow me away whenever I see them. The first one that I can think of is that, establishing shot of the prison when it flies over the prison, when Andy's first showing up, and it just says the grand like landscape, and it kind of goes over the roof, and you see the
Yeah.
yard, you see everybody. It's just so beautifully done. It's so fun to watch. I love that scene, that shot. Another one is when Andy offers to do the taxes for or to make so that the the prison guard, can keep his money
Yeah.
from his inheritance. And when the shot starts like way up top, and it kind of slowly, it just kind of like comes down onto Andy as he's being held over the roof, you know, that one. Like I love that shot. It reminds me of the Raising Arizona shot when he
Mm,
when he finds out that she's barren or whatever, and the kind
yeah.
of his world comes crashing down on him in
Yeah.
a yeah. So it's a very similar shot, but I love it. I love watching that shot.
Yeah.
Um, let's see, what others do I like? There's a lot, but are there any shots that you really enjoy?
Oh, there's a bunch. Like a couple of things that I wrote. I think this movie makes me believe in the magic of filmmaking a lot of time. You mentioned the first shot where it's a helicopter shot over the prison. And I was watching that going, movies are so fun because obviously you're in a helicopter. There's going to be the noise of the helicopter. You can't drown. So they shoot without sound, right? But then
Mhm.
you can go back later. You can add in the sound of the sirens. You can add in the sounds of the wind. You can add in the sounds of the flags flapping in the breeze. You can
Yeah,
add the shuffling of feet. And I'm like, that's so fun being able to put together something like that, even though you're in a helicopter and it's impossible to hear. Right. So I love
yeah,
that stuff. There are a couple shots where you see Andy carving his name into the wall first, right? And it's a shot that continues, but it cuts at a certain point where you just see him write the A. And then later, when Red is recounting how Andy got out, it's the same shot and he carves the N and it carves out a big chunk.
yep,
But it's the same exact shot. It just keeps it from us. When you see Andy walk back in his cell after he figures he's going to leave and after he tricks Norton, with all the book, puts it in the wrong book or the fake book, and he
yeah,
walks in and it's a shot of him walking and they cut, but then later when he's recounting again, the shot continues and it lowers and you see his feet. I'm like, that's cool. Like you
yeah,
really
yeah,
could hide that, right?
yeah,
I love, again, this is a movie about prison. You're gonna have prison rape, right? The question is, do you show it? How much do you show? I think that it's very tasteful in the way that the camera, it's almost like I think Bauhaus in Taxi Driver, how Bickle is on the phone with the Sybil Shepherd character, and it's so painful that the camera moves off of them to look down the hall. It's the same thing, like you don't want to see it. The other note I had is it's too bad that the camera does the same thing when he's being beaten. You know what I mean? When Boggs is being beaten, it's like, oh, I kind of wanted to see that. You know what I mean? I want to see him.
yeah,
So I like that. And I think my favorite shot is that I'm a big fan of visual storytelling. There, like you said, there's a lot of that. There's visual shots in here. Roger Deakins, I think he and Darabont, because Darabont was starting off, he didn't know how to communicate or didn't know. So Deakins wanted to keep the wide vistas of the outside world like limited so that he wanted to keep it claustrophobic so that it felt like you were in that prison. And Darabont was like, no, I want more shots outside. And Deakins was like, yeah, but there's no impact if you keep showing outside stuff. When you show, like you see Andy crawling out of that pipe, it's a big feeling because you see that wide scope, right? And so I think that's what Deakins wanted to go for. But when Brooks is paroled, and the note that I have when it starts is, oh no, Brooks is paroled. This is going to break me. It's because It starts from the very beginning. Story wise, it starts with him threatening Haywood, right, with the knife. When he gets, and then I love the scene where it's Red and all the other boys talking about institutionalization, how Red is like, the walls, you hate them, and then you learn to love them. It's like that's just you're in prison for life, and yeah, that's what they take away from you. It starts very story wise, but then you cut to Brooks exiting the prison. You see him in the center of the frame. He walks towards the camera. You see the guards behind him turn away and walk, so you see their backs. The next shot you see, I believe, is Brooks on a bus. And when you look at that shot, it's him in the center, but all the other people in the background of the bus are not looking at him. They're looking away from him.
Mm.
So it gives you a feeling of even when he's with people, he's isolated. He
Yeah.
doesn't belong. When he gets out of the bus, it's just him framed in the center of the screen. When he ends up in the halfway house, it's him centered. He's just in the middle all by himself. When he's in the supermarket, the only time somebody turns a look at him is the store manager to scold him. And then when is done scolding him, he turns around. So again, it feels very much like Brooks is just ignored and he has no place, and it's telling you all of that visually other than what he's saying on the soundtrack, and it's just beautifully done. Even that last shot, it's so masterful how he climbs up. He's like, I don't want to be here anymore, I'm scared, you know what I mean? He climbs up on that table, and oh, what's he gonna do, and then he's just carving his name, but then it cuts back to that shot of him on the table and it rocks back and forth and you just see him drop, and it cuts to that shot where you see Brooks was here.
Mhm.
And what that shot told me was that it's not just Brooks saying, I was here in this room, right? It's also very existential. It's like he's basically saying, I was here, I existed, don't forget me, right? And so it shows him again, visually just very beautiful. And I think, like I said, I love when that happens. I think Deakins is one of the best at this, and so that's just some of the things that I really, really love about. And it's sepia toned. It feels like, so it feels timeless in a way, even though it takes place in the 40s, 50s, 60s. It's shot in a way where it feels like it could take place anytime because they're all dressed the same, right? It doesn't. I don't get the sense of any. It's timeless in that place because you have no time. You lose track of, or maybe you spend too much time tracking time. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I just think it's all very well done, very beautifully done
Yeah. Well,
visually.
you mentioned two of the reveals that I wanted to talk about, and that was the switching the books in the
Mhm.
safe and the shoes.
Yeah,
My favorite reveal though is the pick hammer in the
the
Bible.
Bible.
And I love it when the warden walks out of the cell with it and says, "Oh, yeah, I almost forgot. Salvation lies within." And when that's revealed at the end, that is so satisfying. When they open the book and you see the outline of the pig hammer,
Mhm.
it's awesome.
Yeah. That was a great scene too, because I think they're sizing each other up, obviously, right? And I think Andy at that point, he's memorized passages because I think he knows that the warden at some point is going to talk with him. So I think he's memorized passages that can get the warden on his side, and it does. It works to the point where he doesn't suspect there's anything in the Bible, right? And so he just kind of plays into his like ego in a way. I think that's a very well shot scene too.
Yeah. Well, there's some things you wanted to bring up. I don't want to take all the time. That's some of the things you want to talk about.
Well, it's interesting. So people I'm going to end up criticizing the movie at a point right here, but I want everybody to know I understand why this is a lot of people's favorite movie, right? I get that. I don't when we talk about these movies, Johnny, we're not here to basically say you shouldn't like these movies. You're going to like a movie for your reasons alone, right?
Right.
So if I have a problem with the movie, that doesn't say anything about you. I'm not here to. I'm just saying this is how I felt during this part. So I'm going to criticize it at some point. Just want you to be aware that there's no hard feelings. I get why this movie means a lot to you, right?
Okay.
But I love that some people have watched this movie from the standpoint of it being like a religious, like about a Christian story, right? And it comes down to like Andy, the first time, Red's talking about him, it's like he just had this aura around him, like he was protected, right? And so he's been described as a messianic figure, like a Christ figure, right? You have obviously the Warden Norton, he talks about like, don't take the Lord's name in vain, there's no blasphemy, but then he kind of presents himself as a god of the prison, but he's really Satan, right? He's just there kind of to again a rebellion. He breaks off from what God has put out for his people, right? And Satan kind of rebels, and so that's what he's doing. He's kind of crooked. You have the stuff where he has that the the painting or whatever, the picture where it says "Your judgment cometh," and he uses that picture to hide his safe.
Yeah.
Where all his illegal stuff is. That's very interesting.
Yeah.
You're the part where Andy, and again, I think it was Robbins' idea. I think when they come to break into the door, he's like, okay, he turns it off. But Robbins was like, wouldn't it be interesting if I just turned it up louder, right? And Darabont was like, yeah, let's go for that. So that part where he's playing the Marriage of Figaro, you see people like these sinners stop in their tracks. You see literally the people in the infirmary rise up from their beds, like the sick rise up to their feet, right? It's kind of like a holy grail moment. Again, you have all these religious kind of, and again, the last scene, I kind of got it behind me when Andy breaks out and he's got his arms outstretched. That's the Christ pose, right?
Yeah.
It's got all these little like religious symbols and things like that. Zuataneo is also, Andy talks about it being playing when there's no memory, where it's basically like once you go to heaven, your sins are forgiven, right? There's all this symbolism that can be read into it. And when people tell Darabont about this, like Robbins will have people come up to him on the street and say how this movie changed their life. Freeman will have the same thing. That's why I think it's Freeman's favorite movie that he's been in because it made him such a big, no, again, an eternal star. Right? When people go up to Darabont and say this movie changed my life, I love the religious symbols. Darabont's like, I didn't mean it like that, but it's great that you're reading stuff into the movie. Right? I think. And let me get your opinion on this. I think that's again the magic of movies. You're leaving this up to people to come away from it with whatever they feel. Like you're giving them the tools to feel something about the movie, and they latch on to whatever symbols that they see that makes it mean something to them. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Well, I think we talked about it earlier how like this movie leaves you with hope and
Yeah.
you walk away feeling good. And so it's possible that because you're feeling so good, you kind of read into the religious part of things and you try to find it. And I think people see what they want to see.
Yeah.
And that's fine. I mean, I don't mind. You can read it however you want to read it. But I don't know. I mean, I'm actually surprised to know that he didn't put any of that stuff in there on purpose because
Yeah.
it looks like it was done on purpose. But I mean, I appreciate that people are willing to or can see that, you know.
Yeah, I mean that's the beauty of it. When you're just putting it out there and people can interpret it, I think like I said, that's what you should be doing when you watch movies. It's going to mean something different to you than it means from your neighbor, right?
Yeah.
So the
And
other
sorry,
no, you go ahead. Go ahead.
so that's the other shot that I thought of was the when they're listening to the opera and the camera goes up to the speaker and it kind of sees the whole yard there. That's another one of those really fantastic cinematic shots that I like a lot. But anyway, go
Well,
ahead.
it's great because they don't know why it means something. They don't know why it's changing them. They don't know why it's
What
stirring
they're thinking
something in
about.
them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, they it's just something that's intrinsic in the music and the even though they don't understand the words like Red was saying, there's just something about it that takes them away, makes them
Yeah.
feel cultured, makes them feel real. You
Yeah.
have
Yeah.
the part
Did not see that shot in my mind, by the way.
yeah. So you have I mentioned the part, the first time you feel heart is when Haywood is like, oh, like he feels guilty for getting fat ass in trouble. The second part, again, is when Andy seizes his opportunity with Hadley, right? And he's like, you can claim that 350,000 whatever by giving it to your wife. You don't have to pay taxes on it. And all I ask in return, if I fill out these forms for you, is 3 beers. Like one night, let everybody working here get 3 beers. And then it cuts that shot where they're just sitting enjoying beer and Andy's just off by himself, and Red just says he didn't accept a beer. I just think that he felt human, right? And that's the first moment where you're like, oh, you feel something, right? You feel something with the Brooks scene. I've been I've been unemployed since April and trying to find a job. I won't go into all the stuff there and trying to support my family, but the Brooks scene, the isolation, the when he says I don't want to do this, I'm tired of being scared, right? Watching it this time, I was sobbing. It hit me like a truck, and I just think again the visuals, the way that it was telling the story, I feel what he's it's not the same thing. I haven't been incarcerated, but I just feel at a loss because I've been doing something for 10 years and then I lose my job and it's like you're trying to get back on your feet again. I really felt that. So
Yeah.
there's another part there, and obviously the ending. So there's a lot of great heart here. So here's the criticism. I think okay, so the difference is there's not a lot of differences between the novella and the movie, like we talked about. The major difference is that in the novella, there are, I think, 3 or 4 different wardens. It's not just Norton, right? So the warden that's like, oh, I'll mail those letters for you if you want, like to the state, so we can get more books, right? That's a different warden than Norton is. In the movie, they condensed all those 4 into one character. The problem with that is I get that it's very like I said, episodic, and I get every scene. When it gets to the Tommy Wallace, is that his name? The
Williams, maybe?
Tommy
I don't know.
Williams. Okay. Anyway, the part with Tommy, right? It gets that I don't. What's the note that I have here? I don't like this stretch of the film. Tommy Williams. I'm not a fan of the character. I'm not a fan of Andy's arc with him, like how he takes him on as a project or a disciple. Again, going back to those the religious symbols. I'm not a fan of how Darabont cuts away from Tommy's story to hear Elmo Blatch talk about it, like how it cuts to that. I don't really like that. I'm not a fan of how the reveal turns Norton and Hadley into these mustache twirling villains. And I think when you combine three or four characters into one, that's what happens. It's like, oh, this to me, Norton feels like a different character at that point. I think it's. Let me ask you: do you think it's a cheat when you feel like Hadley's on her side? Like he's obviously brutal, but when Andy broaches that topic with him, and then he gets attacked after when they're watching Gilda, right? And then when Boggs gets out, you have that scene where Hadley leads the charge and basically beats Boggs to a pulp, right? Later, when you see Hadley bring down guys, like the first guy to talk to Andy about his taxes, it feels like you're warming to Hadley in a way, right? It's the same thing with Norton where you're warming to him. And then the Tommy Williams thing comes in, and all of a sudden it's like they switch. And I get it. I get that Norton doesn't want stuff to come out. I get when Andy says, I won't say anything about our stuff, and that kind of sets Norton off. But I just think that they feel like different characters to me. It doesn't feel like the same character. It feels like all of a sudden they become a plot point instead of I felt like they were becoming people, but now they're plot points. I don't know if that makes any sense. I don't Darabont, because he's a first direct, he looked to Goodfellas, I believe, Scorsese's Goodfellas for inspiration. First of all, how to do the narration, which I think works in the movie, but also how to edit, right? And how to do editing, which is funny because Goodfellas, like we talked about, is very snappy, it's very quick. And this is not. This is the opposite of that. I
Yeah.
also think the Williams, his death scene, right? It reminded me of the Tommy from Goodfellas, right? How it's that whole scene when you think he's being made. They do the whole thing where he says goodbye to his mom, they bring him to that place, and then there's a realization as Tommy walks in this room that and he goes, "Oh no," and he gets shot, right?
Yeah.
I think that's what they were going for in the scene with Tommy Williams and Norton, but it's so clunkily shot. It's so weirdly shot. Like I don't there's a real feeling of dread in Goodfellas where Tommy gets killed, right? And here it just feels really obvious and it feels like written all of a sudden to me. I don't like how Norton goes back and he throws the word obtuse back at Andy. It just feels very written. To me, that whole section is just everything about the rest of the movie feels so natural that all of a sudden when it becomes a movie, right? And you hit hearing all these tropes, it loses me for a good 20 minutes where I think that's the point where I'm like you. I'm like, I move on. Like I don't need this scene, right? It could have gone to something else. I don't know. What do you think about all that? I just think that it
Well,
loses me at that point.
I can see your point. I see why it would lose you there. And I can see how you could say it's more like a movie at that point. But I don't see the whole character change. I don't know. I still feel like Hadley's a bad guy, and I still
Okay.
think that Norton's a bad guy. And I
Yeah.
think they now have a reason to exercise their badness.
Indulge.
Yeah, and
Right.
it makes you hate them more. Like
Yeah.
when you realize that he's the one who shoots Tommy, and then you see how the warden masterminded the whole thing, and then
Mhm.
I don't know, you hate, and so when he does, and when they do get their comeuppance, it's more satisfying.
Right.
And so I don't mind it. I think it's fine. But I see your point though.
I agree. It gets you. You need that to get you to a certain point. You need that to get to the point where, and again, the scene that brings me right back is where Andy, like we said, and Red are talking behind us and talking about what it feels like to, lucky, like my luck just ran out, like I'm unlucky, stuff like that. And the Thomas Newman music is it's eerie and it's sad, like in the background. And so that brings me right back. I just think that I don't know. It just feels very clunky compared to the rest of the movie, and so that's why I'm like, ooh, get past this. I don't like this. Get to the
Yeah.
ending. So that's my only real criticism of the movie, other than adding the stuff with the parole board. Like that's you get when Red is in there the second time and he's just going through the motions. You're like,
Mhm.
the next time this happens, he's going to be different and he's going to be
Yeah.
mad and then he's going to get free. Like I think that's very, very obviously written.
Yeah.
But other than that, but like I said, the ending brings it back. I think the movie until the Tommy Williams part, has done such a great job of putting you inside that prison, making you feel like you're stuck inside those prison walls. Like when they get out and they're doing like the service projects, it feels like an escape. When Red goes down and works in the library and he's able to be Andy's assistant, you get, like I said, the feeling of prison, and you get their friendship. And so when it hits and you have the reveal, I love the reveal of how Norton is throwing the rocks and he throws it through the Raquel Welch poster,
Yeah.
right? And it has that great shot of just the camera backing out from the. I
Yeah.
think that's a great reveal, and all that stuff
It's
is.
great.
And you feel it when Andy's crawling through that pipe. You know what I mean? But it's the Newman score. It's the way it's Deacon cinematography. You're also looking at, I think Richard Francis Bruce was the editor on this. If you're looking at editing, he did Seven the next year. He did The Rock, Air
Okay.
Force One. He's big. You have a guy named Terrence Marsh who is the production designer. He was the art director on Oliver and Dr. Zhivago from the '60s. He won an Oscar for those.
Okay.
Later, he did Claire and Present Danger, Basic Instinct, The Hunt for Red October. I was like, oh my gosh, like this Roger Deakins, like I talked about. You have Thomas
Yeah.
Newman, like I talked. It's just a murderer's row of these professionals that have done beautiful work, and all that ties in to the end of the movie where it's just a feeling when Red is talking about hope. You know what I mean? I hope I make it across the border. I hope I get to see my friend and shake his hand. I hope that the Pacific is as blue as it is in my dreams.
Yeah.
I hope. I mean, that's where the novella ends. You don't get their reuniting. And I
Right.
think Darabont, he didn't know if he wanted to put that in, but he put that in just to have it. And there was, I think, original dialogue between Red and Andy where they repeat their dialogue when they first met, but he thought that was a little obvious. I love that shot where it gives them their privacy and you just see them embrace.
Yeah.
And again, the music is going and you're just, it feels euphoric, that ending. So even though I have problems with that Tommy Williams section, I think it just recovers perfectly,
Yeah.
perfectly.
So my only critique is this: like during that last bit, with all the travel shots where Red's, traveling to go find Andy,
Yeah.
some of it just goes on way too long. All of that can be condensed. Like it's just like he's walking through a field. Okay, get there already. He's on the rock wall. Okay, get there already. It's just all this stuff that he does, and on the bus, and like seeing the towns, and it takes a long time to get him to where he needs to be. And then you get to the end of the movie at this point, so you're like, okay, you've had all these reveals. It's really satisfying. And then it just takes forever for him to get to Andy. And so that's my only critique right there.
Right. Well, the movie is hardly ever in a rush to get anywhere. You know what I mean? It's very, very, but you're right. When it does those reveals and it's very fast and it calms down again. So again, I get what they're doing. I get that they're repeating shots. He's in the same room. Red's in the same room. Obviously, you're getting the feeling, and it's that he's going to go the same route as Brooke. Right. It's so funny because when I showed this on video to my girlfriend at the time, we get to the part of the end where Red reads the letter, and it's such a great line. Like, remember, Red, hope is a good thing, and no good thing ever dies, right? And
Mhm.
the Thomas Newman music starts, and it gets to the part where Red's like, get busy living or get busy dying. And then it cuts and he writes his name. So is Red, right? My girlfriend at the time, she started freaking out when he has the shot of him stepping up to the chair. She started yelling, "What is he doing? He's going to kill himself? Like, why did you show me this movie?" She started freaking out. And I think I calmed her down by shushing her or just saying, wait, wait, wait. But then later when I thought about it, I'm kind of baffled because you look at the Brooke scene, right? The way that the music is written, the way that the shots are so organic. When he kills him, obviously it's misleading when he just writes his name, but then he ends up hanging himself, right? But the music and the shot composition are telling you that's what's going to happen. When Red reads that letter and the music starts and it's the hopeful shots, I'm like, retrospectively, I'm like, what in the movie is telling you at this point that he's going to kill himself? What in the movie is telling you that? I'm like, I don't know if you know how to watch movies. You know what I mean? When you think that, it's you know what I mean? Like the visuals and the sound and the performances are telling you something. And the fact that you're like, oh, it's going to end tragically when there's hopeful music. I'm like, I don't know if you're processing this correctly. I don't know. What do you think?
Well, I think they're leading you to believe that. So maybe I can see why she would think that because they're making you believe, maybe he's going to kill himself too. But then,
Right.
like, you're right though. Like everything points to another outcome. So I'm not quite sure why she reacted the way she did. But it's fun
Right.
to know who it is that was reacting that way. For me,
Right. And the other story I want to tell too is we talk about the reveals. My wife, talking about a girlfriend to a different woman becoming my wife. She's seen The Shawshank Redemption maybe 15 times, but it's always from the same moment. It's the moment where Andy, they think he's going to kill himself. Every time it's on TV, whenever she turns to it, that's the part that it starts with. And she's watched it all the way to the end. So I'm like, well, there's no reason for you to watch the rest of the movie if you know all the reveals, right? As you've seen the
Yeah,
good parts. I just think it's really funny. She's like, don't forget to mention that I've seen this movie 15 times, but just from the same part. I think that's hilarious.
that is funny. Oh. All right. Is there anything else? I think you had plans to have a guest on this episode with us, but it didn't quite work out. But you have some
Yeah.
question for us.
So I've got a friend on Twitter, again, one of the people that I chat with all the time. His name is Carlo. He hosts the movie Loot. Originally, when we did our 90s Palooza episode, I talked with him about coming on for Shawshank Redemption because this is his favorite movie. And so I was like, yeah, if we do that, let's go ahead. We kind of lost touch and nothing ever came of it. And then when you decided to choose this, and again, stuff has been happening where we just weren't able to work something out with him. And we've been not recording for a bit. It just got too complicated to try to figure that out. So I
Yeah.
wrote him basically saying, we're recording this tomorrow. I'm apologizing in advance. I know we talked about it, but we're just not going to have time to get you on and chat with you. So, but I said, if you want to write me a little something, why this is your favorite movie, then I can read that as a recording. So he sent me a little thing. I think it's beautiful. I'm just going to read it
Okay.
from Carlo. So glad to see that you're covering The Shawshank Redemption. Not only do I think it is a masterfully directed and shot film full of excellent performances, but it is one that I find to be magical, profound, and meaningful to me personally. What that film has given me ever since I first rented it back in the mid '90s is a philosophy of life, a mantra. At the time I saw it, I was going through what seemed to be rough heartbreaks, romantic frustrations in my youth. So that message of get busy living or get busy dying, to either wallow in those frustrations and get stuck where I was, or convince myself that things could change and move towards that, to find hope where you might not see any. That's what the film gave me, and I've tried to embrace that message since then and all the hardships I've gone through in the last 30 years or so, which have shifted from petty heartbreaks from my youth to health issues, economical problems, career frustrations, family problems, and then some. But through it all, I always try to embrace Andy's hope that things can and will change, and get busy working for that. Thank you for reaching out for my thoughts, and I look forward to your episode on the film. So again, me asking him that and me talking about, we mentioned this is number one on the IMDb top 100 list. It's been there for 17 years. Obviously, there are people that love this movie, that adore this movie, people like Carlo that it's changed their lives. I might have criticisms of the movie. You might have criticisms of the movie, Johnny, but at the end of the day, that message of hope, I think that's very, very important. The movie gets that across beautifully, and it ends on a way that, like we talked about, you just felt like different. You feel like change. You feel like you want to do something with your life. And I think Carlos speaks for a lot of people and how this movie affects them. I wanted to end my thoughts on that note because I get that this movie's important. My flaws with it should not be your flaws. Love the movie and embrace it for what you love and what you think it is, what it
Yeah.
means to
Yeah, that was very well said. I agree 100%. I don't have very many, problems with this movie. Like I say, my only problem is it doesn't move quite fast enough, but I get why it doesn't. But I love everything else. Like I love the cinematography, I love the writing, love the acting, love the directing.
you.
It's just the movie that you can watch over and over again and not get tired. And that's one of my, you know, um, standards for a good movie is you can watch it over and over and over again. That's this one is one of those.
Yep.
All right, so what's next on our list?
Well, we mentioned it. The Lion King was the number one movie in 1994, and I wanted to do a Disney movie for this season. And when I thought of, and I wanted to have on a couple guests that I've been meaning to have on for a while, Rachel Wagner and Stanford Clark. They are fellow Utah film critics. I say fellow. I'm not really a film critic, but they're professional film critics. They own their own blogs. They run their own sites, things like that. They're
Yeah.
Rachel is Rotten Tomato approved, so I consider her a fairly a professional. I've been friends with them for a long time. I've wanted to have them on to chat. They host a Disney podcast together, or Talking Disney, Disney Talking. It's different because they have it on Twitter or something else. Whether so, I'll get that right when we talk to them. But I've wanted to chat with them for so long, and when I thought of a Disney movie that obviously I wanted to talk Disney with them, and what Disney movie would I want to talk about? I think Lion King, Disney wise, is the most impactful movie of this whole decade. So we're going to chat The Lion King with Rachel Wagner and Stanford Clark. Again, I'm going to love having them on, and it'll be a fun conversation with them.
All right, well, that sounds good. Well, that does it for Shawshank Redemption. I'm Johnny Craddock.
I'm Darin Lundberg.
For NostalgiaCast, get busy living or get busy dying.
Why do we do this? Why do we? I know we always end with a quote. Hope is a good thing, and good things never die. How about that?
There you go. Perfect.
All right.